Goats doing goat shit. This is the Spun Today segment where I like to highlight extraordinary individuals that do extraordinary things, even when and especially when they don't have to. This episode's installment of a goat doing goat shit is none other than Joe Rogan, who has made the list before. This is probably his third, if not fourth time. And the reason why, as originally reported by Spotify's blog and picked up by the Wall Street Journal, Associated Press, and others, which I will link to in the episode notes, is because in February of 2024, this month, Joe Rogan inked yet another multi-year licensing deal with Spotify. For those of you who don't know, one of the other reasons actually when Rogan initially made the Goats Doing Goat Shit list was because he inked a $100 million licensing deal to take his podcast, The Joe Rogan Experience, exclusive with Spotify for 3 years. I want to highlight again, it was a licensing deal, which I love harping on and highlighting here on the podcast, because there's a huge difference between selling something and licensing something. When you license something that you create, you can license it for X amount of dollars, sometimes and usually less than what you would make if you just sold it outright. But what's great about a licensing deal is that once that license is up, you still own everything and you can license it out all over again. So Joe Rogan did a licensing deal for $100 million 3 years ago that recently expired. And because it was such a lucrative deal for Spotify and its shareholders, which saw many, many, many times that $100 million in stock profits as soon as the news broke. But Rogan, since again maintained ownership of his show, was now able to license it yet again. And this time the deal has a few interesting caveats. First and foremost, it's another multi-year licensing deal. The number of years I'm not clear on. I'm assuming it's around 3 to 5, but I haven't found the actual reporting on the number of years. But it's a $250 million licensing deal. Shout out to the podcast GOAT. So not only did he make $100 million over 3 years with the original deal, now he's making another $250 million, which includes, by the way, upfront guarantee as well as revenue sharing on his ad sales. But the sickest part, in my opinion, is that it's no longer exclusive with Spotify. This deal was so lucrative with Spotify that they didn't even hold on to that part of the deal. Instead, Rogan and team negotiated that the podcast will once again go wide. It'll be available everywhere. So if you want to listen to it on Apple, you can. It's already actually on Apple. And there will be a video version available on YouTube as well, which is interesting because back in the day before the Spotify deal, Rogan's pod was wide. It was available on every podcatcher. And the video versions were exclusively on YouTube just because YouTube had that's where videos would be seen. You know what I mean? It wasn't by virtue of any deal with YouTube, but that's just where video podcasts were viewed. Part of when Rogan went to Spotify, part of the deal that was negotiated was that Spotify had to develop the capability of streaming video as well as audio. And they developed this entire video capability through their app because of Rogan, which other podcasters and content creators obviously have benefited from as well. But now that the deal is going wide again, or the show rather is going wide again, we will once again be able to watch the podcast episodes on YouTube, not just the video versions on Spotify. But it does seem, for example, that Spotify is keeping, aside from YouTube, seems to be keeping, at least as of the recording of this episode, the video rights with Spotify, because you can still watch the videos obviously on Spotify, but on Apple, for example, where the podcast is already available, it's audio only. So Spotify does seem to be retaining that. I would imagine that the video versions of the podcast will be available on YouTube as they stated, but probably on some sort of like delayed release, like maybe a week later the video will be on YouTube or something like that. But that's just my personal speculation on that. Shout out once again to Rogan, the undisputed heavyweight champ of podcasting goats. for not only having one of the dopest and most important, essential outlets on the planet, where folks from any and all walks of life can come and share their art and discuss their thoughts and share their expertise with the world, but also for doing it right, always doing his show with integrity and honor, and giving other podcasts everywhere, including myself, a template for how to do it right. And not just in caring about what you do, loving what you do, pursuing your passions to be a better person, wanting to help others, but in realizing that there's different ideas and thoughts out there, and that it's okay that they coexist. It's okay that differing opinions are shared and explored. It's essential. But also in just the integrity that comes with the whole financial aspect of things, and in doing things right and correctly, where he was very much the architect of not just selling ads on his podcast back way before the Spotify deal, way before the whole thing blew up, when he only had one sponsor, shout out to Fleshlight, where he again was very much so the architect of not just selling shit to sell it, but only selling things that you believed in, or that at least you tried and you liked, and not, just doing McDonald's ads just because they came with the bigger bag. Having that level of integrity and foresight snowballed all these years later into the $250 million, more than doubled up from the previous $100 million deal. So shout out again to Joe Rogan and to Spotify for inking this deal, and for making yet another appearance on the Spun Today Goats Doing Goat Shit segment.